Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Real Report. We have a lot of things to cover today, such as the North Korean missile launch over Japan, more aid being sent to Ukraine from the United States and the IMF, some things on our F-35s that are pretty shocking coming out of South Korea, Russian gas, a little bit on Nord Stream and the continued energy crisis, which, of course, we're going to throw Germany into the mix, some things on the Iran crisis, and we're going to wrap up with the stock market and the Jolts Report. So, make sure to leave a like, comment anything interesting down below, subscribe, and share because it really helps me out. Thank you to everybody who has joined the community recently. What you're looking at right now on your screen is the Earth Submarine fiber optic cable network. I bring this up because rules of engagement or rules of the game, if you want to call it that, changed with the sabotaging of the Nord Stream pipeline. And it's important to realize how the world is actually connected together, especially economically, and how catastrophic it would be to sever one of these cables to, say, from New York to London. The banking consequences alone would be incalculable. So I just bring that up for food for thought as things continue to escalate around the world. And I thought this was the most exciting thing. I should play some party music because the U.S. national debt just topped $31 trillion for the first time, as America's borrowing binge has long been viewed as sustainable because of historically low interest rates. Well, we know that it is not sustainable, and it has had extraordinarily negative effects on both the economy, when people can no longer afford their car payments, mortgages, heating, food, the whole 9 yards, and it's only going to get worse. And the Fed is now in a tight spot as the economy, up until the last 2 days, as the Dow dipped under 30,000, was crashing. And, of course, with the jobs report and all that, they'll say, it's working. However, go to your grocery store. It's not working. We can't spend our way out, and unless they're willing to raise interest rates higher than the current rate of inflation, then inflation is here to stay. However, you won't hear people talk about that on MSNBC. Anyway, North Korea fires a ballistic missile over Japan, prompting evacuation order in another escalatory event. Again, North Korea on Tuesday fired a suspected ballistic missile over Japan for the first time in 5 years, prompting a rare order from Japanese officials for residents to take shelter and drawing international condemnation, including, of course, from the United States. Japan and South Korea and the U.S. concluded the missile launch was a clear violation of the UN Security Council resolutions, and the United States and its allies intended to seek an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council to further discuss the North's latest provocation. North Korea has tested an unprecedented number of missiles this year as it diversifies and expands its weapons arsenal. U.S., Japanese, and South Korean governments have all conducted military exercises designed to demonstrate the allies' readiness to work together in the event of a conflict. Just this Tuesday was the most recent, as the U.S. and South Korean militaries conducted a precision bombing training against targets in the sea in response to the North Korean missile. Tuesday's launch is the 7th time since 1998 that North Korea has launched a missile over Japan, and of course they note there are signs that a new cycle of escalation is taking shape, with North Korea rejecting overtures and possibly preparing for a 7th nuclear test. Meanwhile, the diplomatic feud between Japan and Russia is deepening as Tokyo expelled a Russian consul Monday in retaliation for the detention and expulsion of the Japanese consul. Japanese officials said they sent the strongest words of condemnation possible through diplomatic channels. So don't you worry. We can, of course, have a meeting about a meeting of a future meeting, and we'll meet to condemn them. Yes, that is our course of action, and that will deter them. I swear it'll work this time. The missile's reach includes Japan and Guam. The Hwasong-12 was the intermediate range ballistic missile used, and again, can reach Japan, Guam, U.S. territory in the Pacific Ocean to the east of Japan. The United States said they will take all necessary measures involving all elements of American national power to defend South Korea and Japan. So now we're going to defend Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Ukraine, Apparently, we're going to rescue all of Europe during their energy crisis. America to the rescue. Hallelujah. As our own country is spiraling out of control, just at a slower rate than everyone else. And an interesting one, speaking of Korea, well, South Korea's radar evading F-35 fighters are rated as operationally, well, junk. They didn't say junk, but unready on 234 occasions over an 18-month period ending in June due to malfunctions. Again, operational unready 234 times. The fighters were grounded 172 instances, while there were 62 cases in which the jets could fly but were unable to carry out certain missions. Grounded fifth-generation fighters could carry out missions for only 12 days on average last year and 11 days in the first half of the year. That is abysmal. Comparison, the previous F-4E and the F-5 older generation fighters were grounded only 26 and 28 times over an 18-month period. F-35As met their target operation rate of 75%, though, the Air Force said. There's no problems in maintaining the readiness posture. Well, South Korea would beg to differ. So it's really interesting to compare, of course, our equipment with the headlines that everything a certain country that invaded another country is outdated and from 1960. Here, of course, we're looking at the live UA map of Ukraine. You can see a lot of attacks, explosions, rockets, rocket warnings. All of these in blue are, of course, take cover, red alert for Ukraine. And right here on the front, you can see a lot of attacks have picked up over the last 24 hours. Speaking of Ukraine, Biden approved $625 million in aid package for Kiev. Ukraine pushes further into territory annexed by Moscow. Ukrainian forces saw more success on the battlefield, pushing through Russian defenses in the south of the country, as well as consolidating their hold on territory around Lyman in the east Donetsk region, looking to push further into neighboring Luhansk. None of the regions fully occupied by Russian forces, though. Another $625 million in military aid is going to be sent to Kiev. And of course, that's just the tip of the spear, because now the IMF is considering sending a whopping $1.3 billion in emergency funding for Ukraine. IMF staff prepared the necessary documents and believe Ukraine has received sufficient financial assurances from its global partners to meet the IMF's debt sustainability requirements and qualify for further emergency funds. You know, our whole idea of giving countries more military equipment, what they didn't note was we're sending them more HIMARS as well. The Lend-Lease, we're never going to see a penny of that money back. The funds would come from a new emergency lending program to address food shortages. I thought that was the most interesting takeaway. Both Tucker Carlson mentioned a famine and food shortages due to the fallout of a nuclear attack, and now the IMF is also throwing this into their pressers. Funds would come in new emergency lending programs to address food shortages. Interesting. The IMF provided $1.4 billion in emergency assistance to Ukraine in March already. And of course, another big takeaway, why Europe's energy prices are spiraling out of control. This one's just a big joke. I don't know if you guys saw this, or I reported on it about a week or two ago, that they had a game show, and the prize was they were going to pay your energy bill. Now they just note here, it's a sign of the times that in game shows that you give away prizes for household energy bills. It tells you that the household energy bills are probably too high. What an astute observation. So they've already increased anywhere between 30 and 60% for all household customers, talking about energy bills, and as of October 1st, 3 days ago, another increase of 80% has taken place. And that's why Truss is getting a lot of flack, as she announced a price freeze. Typical household, she said, will pay no more than £2,500 per year on their energy bill for the next 2 years. Realistically, that's not going to happen. Fuel poverty is not having enough money to keep your home at a safe temperature. They noted, though, this is incredible. I didn't know this. Just last winter, there were around 10 million people and 4.5 million households in fuel poverty across the UK. And they're saying this year it's going to be even more dire. That is a lot. There were already around 10 million people. course, U.S. Treasury seeks phase G7 oil sanctions as the EU ban looms. Sanctions on Russia will target its oil and products in 3 phases. Sanctions will target Russian crude oil. Later ones are going to focus on diesel, and they're even going to include naphtha as well. 2-phase ban is set to begin on December 5th. So we got about 2 months before winter is officially here and things hit the fan over in Europe. Processing Nord Stream 2, AG's request for gas pipeline inspection may exceed 20 days, so they're putting off the investigation as we continue to sit around and point fingers and deny any responsibility. But I just find that this one interesting. They say, well, who knows, and we're certainly not going to know, and by then all the evidence will be gone, and then nobody will ever know, but we both know that's the point. Saudi Arabia and Russia plan deep oil cuts in defiance of the U.S. The most exciting part of this, oil spikes after OPEC hints at a 2 million barrel per day production cut. Impact on an actual production could be smaller since several members are already pumping far below their official quotas, as of course oil spikes. The world is misinterpreting the oil market by worrying too much about a potential recession in the near future. Current oil prices indicate a focus on short-term economics rather than supply fundamentals. So just more inflation, more pain in your wallet at the pump is on the way. And of course, from Michael Yon, if you guys haven't ever been over to his site, it's fantastic, michaelyon.com/dispatches. I'm not going to go through the whole article, but he's over in Europe right now and is talking about the massive cutting of the forests in Germany for heating this winter. And of course, that's greenwood. He's talking about also migrants to the Netherlands are living on cruise ships, catered free food, and gloating on the CCP-owned TikTok. The invasion continues, while many European taxpayers already are unemployed or soon will be. Meanwhile, here in Ireland, he says people are prevented from using clean-burning peat, plentiful in Ireland, while they import forest from Lithuania. Forest wood, that is. There was even a scandal of peat exported to mainland Europe and re-imported back to Ireland, as he's investigating what's going on over there and calculating food imports, exports. A lot of interesting stuff, so check him out. And another interesting one as we get into what's going on with the Iran crisis. Take a listen to this. As they chant "Death to America," "Death to America" in the parliament, which I'm not going to play for the entire minute and 27 seconds, but just interesting to see what everyone is doing around the globe. Of course, they're condemning the ongoing anti-regime protests during his speech. In case you haven't been following that, they are spreading. However, they have such a massive military. It's essentially self-policing, according to Peter Zion. Some of the region's strongest female supporters, he claimed, do not wear the full hijab in public, indicating that the regime may relax its enforcement to placate protesters. Anti-regime protests increased in number on October 3rd in at least 18 Iranian cities and 16 different provinces. Iranian university students and faculty staged widespread demonstrations following the regime's brutal crackdown on Sharif University protesters on the 2nd, and Iranian high school girls are increasingly participating in protests throughout Iran. Accusations that the U.S. and Israeli agents, here's the takeaway from this article, blaming the U.S. and Israel on orchestrating the riots in Iran. The IRGC likely attacked anti-regime Kurdish militia positions in Iraqi Kurdistan for the 8th consecutive day, as of course we don't want to forget about the Middle East. And of course, domestically, 4 states deploy National Guard to the U.S.-Mexico border as we are continuing to be overrun on a minutely basis. 4 states are sending 500 soldiers to help secure the border. Unfortunately, Abbott in Texas announced he was reducing the 10,000 National Guard soldiers he had placed at the southern border down to 5,000. Shocking Jolt, biggest crash in job openings on record outside of global that 2019 year lockdown. Investors know that the moment the Fed pivots dovish and capitulates on its tightening cycle, risk will explode limit up. However, even the U.S. is sliding into a recession, or rather going to be a depression. Because the U.S. is sliding into a recession, stocks remain sticky to the upside, and the VIX barely rises to crisis levels, waiting for the inevitable pivot. The Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, said further rate increases would be needed to contain inflation, but the RBA board was not on a preset path and was aware rates had already risen sharply. Australian government bonds plunged by the most since 2008 as we continually come back to 2008 levels in finance after the central bank raised interest rates by less than expected 25 basis points, which they said is the biggest dovish shock since 2008. Boy, are we in for a treat. I think we're getting to the point where markets are pricing in peak rates. You'll start to see the trajectory of inflation moderate, and that should be a good sign. Now, you'll see similar moves from what we've seen from the RBA today. The magnitude of rate hikes will slow, and of course, then we'll get stagflation at best. Hopping into the market real quick, and then we're going to wrap things up, of course, across the board from information technology, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, etc., Vibrant Green, communication services, Google, Amazon, Tesla, consumer staples, Walmart, Procter & Gamble, financials, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, all up a lot. Of course, energy, utilities, materials, real estate, and industrials all followed suit. Rally was pretty substantial. Of course, the S&P right now is sitting at 3,800, 3,803, and up over 3% on the day. We've got the point of control for 30 days sitting at just under 4,030. Of course, here looking at the MES contract, we're on a 6.35% rotation up after we found support down here on a 4% decline. As the market tries to recover, as you can see here, we just came back to the 3,800 level, which I've had marked out for months on end. Take a look here at our combined S&P 500, NASDAQ, Dow Jones chart. Pretty typical. Let's see if we can actually hold this. And that's going to do it for today. So if you guys find anything interesting, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.